Dear companions, welcome. This is the next posting about my safari into the southeast of Angola. I hope you enjoyed the previous one, and I hope you're going to enjoy this one too.
My planned day of departure had finally arrived. I had made it. It was still dark when I was tying down the last of the hold-down straps. The load was modest, by modern safari preferences, I guess. Light as possible, only the essentials for survival, and a few basic comforts. Most would think it's primitive and even snigger at my bush-cuffed assemblage. But I know it is tried and tested over many safaris, and it gives me mobility and survivability in the wilderness. Dawn was just beginning to colour the east when I was finally ready to say goodbye to Nanelle. Swallowed the lump in my throat and I shifted in behind the big steering wheel. Ahead lay between 4 and 5 days of road travel before I would be in the bush. The first part is through the modern world, rural, with wide stretching fields dotted with grazing cattle and the occasional farming machine at work. Every 50 kilometers or so I'd pass through a small farming town. Everything was rustic, but modern nonetheless. After I crossed the border into Botswana, the modern world quickly reduces to mere flashes in the occasional larger town. These are tenuously held together over long distances by the thin ribbon of the modern road. For the rest, the middle world stretches unbroken on either side for hundreds of kilometers. It's a world almost wilderness, but touched with strokes of the modern world palette. Here and there, little vehicle tracks and footpaths branch off and wind into the bush to clusters of buildings. Their occupants are people of the earth. Their world consists of their village, the bush around them, the skies above, and a collection of basic artifacts they need for survival. Shelter, their few head of livestock, and hand utensils, many of them self-made. Away from these huddles of people, cattle, goats, and donkeys roam the bush and the road, over which they nonchalantly claim complete freedom of movement and repose. Despite the main road and what its passage through their world might imply, or what they may have observed or heard when they made the occasional journey to the larger towns on foot, bicycle, or donkey cart, these middle world people appear to be unaffected by the modern world. They live their simple lives in blissful happiness a day at a time. The larger towns are enigmatic contrasts of modern buildings randomly alternating with makeshift shops that jostle for space and push each other onto the pavements and onto the parking lots. Many are open at any hour and they offer anything from fake branded clothes to personal accessories to food to liquor, patent medicine, airtime, household utensils, more. These areas throng with people from the suburbs and from the surrounding areas. As opposed to their rural counterparts, the townspeople themselves are keenly aware of the modern world, of which they form their own interpretation. This they try to emulate fiercely, and you can see it from the clothes and accessories they wear to the wannabe slang and the mannerisms they adopt. The long stretches of road in between towns in the present-day middle world are quite often good. Tar or graded gravel if one is lucky, but they can become rutted or potholed nightmares that eat up your time and exhaust your patience and endurance. Madala has no radio and it's far too noisy to tempt listening to anything anyway. Over the better roads, I always have a firm intent to think about something constructive, but typically this deteriorates to random mental doodling. Over the bad roads, Madala maintains a tortuous assault on the body and on the senses, and this requires full attention to try and limit the damage. Night stops are usually spent in makeshift camps, some distance off the road. I try to find an area that shows no sign of human habitation for a few kilometers around. The stopovers are welcome breaks in the torture that Madala inflicts, even over the modern tar roads, but they're brief and functional. I find a tree with a suitable canopy to keep the dew off me. I sling my hammock for the night, have dinner, and go to bed, or more precisely, hammock. Mornings start before dawn with a quick mug of coffee. Breakfast happens when I spot a nice tree far enough from the road to avoid bother from the locals. If I find a nice tree in the afternoon, a tea break is usually mandatory, again for a bit of repose. Many would find this 24-hour routine tedious. I find the endless stretches of bush where nothing happens except the occasional donkey or a few cattle or goats strolling across the road soothing. What's more, the practical ingenuity of middle world people to use materials available from their natural environment and to adapt all manner of devices from the modern world to somehow work to make their life easier is fascinating, amusing, and charming. And so, to me, the middle world becomes as much a part of the experience as the wilderness itself.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll join me again next week. Goodbye.